Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Amanda Best podcast, where our mission is simple. It's to inspire and empower you to take aligned action towards your dream life, whatever that looks like for you. I have a very special guest here today, my friend Sam from LA. Sam is a fine line tattoo artist based in Los Angeles, known for his delicate and minimalist designs. Sam specializes in creating tattoos that blend artistry with personal meaning, making each piece unique to the individual wearing it. But before we get into this amazing conversation, as we've done with every episode, we're just going to take a moment to ground down, arrive in the here and now, and get present so that we can soak up all the amazing juice of this conversation. So, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, if it's safe to do so, I invite you to close down your eyes. I always like to put a hand on my heart and one on my belly, just to arrive here and now, remind myself that I'm here in my body. And I want you to start breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth. And with each inhale, I want you to think of an intention, something you're calling in, something you want to be filled up with. And on every exhale through your mouth, I want you to imagine you're letting go of something that no longer serves you. Maybe it's a thought, a memory, a feeling. It could be physical, emotional, whatever it is. Really imagining letting that go. So we're going to do a couple breaths together, in through the nose and out through the mouth. Nose, out through the mouth. Last one, feel free to make some noise, shake it out, do what you need to do, in through the nose and out through the mouth. Welcome. Welcome to your bodies. Welcome to Amanda Vest, and welcome, Sam.
How's it going?
I'm good. How are you feeling?
I'm good. I'm feeling good. Feeling very zen, very laid back.
Where are you right now?
Just at home in LA.
Are you still living in the same apartment that you were in last time we connected?
Was that the West Hollywood one?
Yeah.
No, I moved out of there. I guess was that almost like 2 years ago now? Time
Yeah.
flies.
I think the first time I met you was maybe in 2022, I want to say.
Yeah,
That feels
I
right.
moved like a little above Hollywood, and then I moved in with my partner, and we like literally across the road from my previous spot, so like 30 yards away. Just
Amazing.
kind of funny, but
Amazing.
yeah.
Well, I always love to share with people how we met. We met a couple years ago now. I was looking to get some fine line tattoos, and I believe you had just recently started doing
Yeah,
tattoo work at the time. And so I think I have, how many pieces of yours do I have? I did
not
the,
enough.
no, we have the heart. We have the heart. We have Stay Wild. We have Impermanence. I think three.
Yeah, I
I think
think
I've
about three sounds right.
three of yours. But yeah, so Sam has done a handful of my pieces. And I mean, I have 9 tattoos now because I've been traveling. I haven't been able to do all of them with you,
Cheetah.
but but I will say you have been my favorite tattoo experience because we always just have the best conversations. Every single time I came over, we would just get into these beautiful conversations about life. And I've been watching your journey and seeing your Instagram blow the fuck up. So if you guys go to Sam's Instagram, which we'll tag in the show notes, but you do a really great job with content creation, first of all. And then your
Some
pieces and your art has just grown so much. I'm so impressed with you. I'm so proud of you. It's been so cool. There's nothing better than having a conversation with somebody, hearing about their dreams, and then literally getting to watch them live their dream. Like, it's so cool.
It's surreal at times. I feel very appreciative. And it's funny when reflecting on that stuff of how things evolve and what
Yeah.
little steps have a snowball effect. Because I feel like with tattoos, there's like, you have an idea of this sort of tattoo you want to do. And then with social media, something does well and it might be an outlier from what you typically do. And then that snowballs. And I think that's kind of happened to me like twice now, where there's been significant moments where I'm like, oh, now this is responsible for the bulk of the tattoos I do.
Like, what specifically?
I guess there's kind of two, but the second one, I guess, is the most noticeable in terms of how it's like affected my career. One of my friend's brothers, he works for like a script, like greenlighting company.
Hmm.
and he wanted to get a tattoo of a scene from Normal People on the
Hmm.
beach of like the two figures, like silhouette figures running. And his usual tattooist didn't want to do it, or it wasn't along the lines of what they wanted to do.
Right.
So he hit me up and I did it and I posted it, and that did really well on social media. That's when the whole photo tattoos started happening because people would go, I have a picture of like my friends and my family at the beach. So that beach scene turned to people's memories on the beach, which then turned to people's memories in general. Like that kind of equates to 90% of the work I do now is these kind of, and with the nature of the conversations that we've had in the past, it's so nice. Obviously, tattoos have meaning, the sentimentality of being able to capture a photograph or a memory.
Yeah.
It feels really special. So it makes every day very unique and it makes every interaction extra special.
When did you start tattooing? I'm almost sure I was one of the very first, as in your first batch of people that you worked
Yeah.
on, I think.
I think now it's been around like 2.5 years. Yeah, I've been at the tattoo studio I work at in LA for 2 years. So any time prior to that was when I just decided to start and I started practicing and tattooing any kind of willing victims who wouldn't mind a learner. So yeah, about 2.5 years. I say 2 years professionally.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, what did that look like for you? So, you were doing a different job before, and then you just decided this was something you were passionate about, or what was that process? I always talk about on this podcast, there's a different layers and steps towards reaching your dreams. And the first step, which I feel like many people breeze over, is what is my dream? Getting clarity on what is the thing that I want to be doing. Oftentimes, we can get so locked into whatever career we're pursuing or whatever job we're doing and so focused on I need to pay the bills that we forget to have those dreams of what do I really want to be doing with my time if I wasn't getting paid, what lights me up. And I'd love to hear what your process into that experience was.
I feel like it's such a long one.
We got time.
Yeah. When I because I'm English and I was moving out to LA because my partner at the time, who was half American, is a singer and she signed a record deal and had always wanted to move out to LA. And I had never had any particularly strong feelings either way, like for or against it. And then I got stuck in London during lockdown, waiting for my visa, which dragged everything out. And we had this long distance and a breakup. We're still very close today. But that lockdown period was integral for me because it felt like a time where I had time to focus on myself. I was like, okay, I I just reached the point where I wanted to start doing things for me. I set myself little goals. I wanted to meditate every day. I wanted to reconnect with passions. I used to draw a lot as a kid and I loved it. And I guess from the background of growing up, of having parents who are like a teacher and nurse, I never felt like a creative job was something I could do. But I set myself a challenge to do a drawing a day and everything like that snowballed. And I started developing a style that I really liked. And I started doing commissions and selling little prints, not for much money or anything. And when I moved to LA, that semi went on hold because I was like, I need to make money. Like
Right.
I've gone through this breakup from a long relationship. And I was like, okay, I'm by myself. I need to do this. So I have a 9 to 5 job. I was doing some custom art on the side, and I had two or three different clients for social media and things like that and video editing. So I was doing a 7 day a week grind. I had this goal. I was like, I need to make 100K a year. I think I was doing pretty well towards it. But it just kind of hit a point when I was like, so many different reasons, but never particularly having a boss who's nice to you,
Yeah.
like silly stuff like that. Never feeling comfortable in like relaxation outside of work. I always felt like I had something to do or needed to do something. And just kind of realizing I had never done anything I was hugely proud of in terms of career. I have friends who are successful lawyers and things back home. And whenever their friends would talk to me about what I did, I was just kind of would breeze past it because
Right.
I never felt too, I felt embarrassed, I suppose. I would always say I was like working to live as opposed to, not that you want
Right.
to like live to work per se, but it reached the point when I guess my main kind of mindset now I had was, if I was to look back at my life, would I be disappointed that I'd never pushed myself to do something I was passionate about? And I think for me, that goes not just career wise, but you hear people being like, oh, I've always wanted to go to Italy. I've always wanted to do this or do that. And you're like, well, why don't you? And they say, oh, because who's going to look after my dogs? I can't afford it. But
Yeah.
there's a balance between being financially responsible and pursuing what would genuinely make you happy. And I feel like when you get in that mindset of doing what feels right to you, the universe supports you with it. And that's
Yeah.
kind of what happened with me.
The word that comes to mind when you say that, when, when people say, I can't this, I can't that, I like the reframe of that's not a priority to you, right? It's
Yeah.
nothing that you can or can't do. If in the world of infinite possibility, it may be logistically difficult, but
Yeah.
it's possible. But if you're not prioritizing doing something creative, if you're not prioritizing going on that trip, having that experience, it won't happen, you know?
Exactly. That's the thing. Exactly. It's really fascinating when I look back at it, because 2 days after I had that realization, I kind of like mustered the strength to call my mum. I went into the office of the job.
What was the 9 to 5?
It was literally, I feel like I manifested this job. It sounds funny, but it was social media for Beverly Hills Plastic Surgery and Spa. And
Of course it was.
I was like, I've never had a facial. I want a free facial, and I got this job. And the people there were great, but I was just like, when you realize at times like there's a ceiling to what I'm doing. How am I going to, especially in the modern kind of financial climate, like I'm never going to be able to afford a house.
Yep.
I can't really afford to travel. So I just hit a point when I was like, I want to do something I'm passionate about, I can be successful with. And I just wanted to go for it. So I phoned my parents at like 9 a.m. LA time. And I was like, hey, I hope you guys can understand and be supportive, but I've decided I want to quit my job and start tattooing. And my dad's in the past, and I realize this is his own love language, but whenever we spoke on the phone, he'd be like, are you saving for a pension? Like,
Yeah.
are you working hard? Are you saving? Blah, blah, blah. Um, and so I was expecting him to be like, that's irresponsible. But he was like, you're very talented, go for it. If it doesn't work out after a year or so, then think about what else you can do. And that was really a nice weight off, having like
Yeah.
parents be supportive of it. Cause I know not everyone is that fortunate, but I quit my job like the next day. My savings were effectively a month's worth of pay. And when I look back at it, it felt like my bank account just stayed the same somehow. Like I was paying
Yeah.
rent and I was like, oh, am I going to have no money? And I just never really felt too much of a struggle for some reason.
Yeah.
Um, it all kind of worked out, which was really nice.
That's amazing. No,
Yeah.
it's so cool. You hear that story so often of people going to their parents. I think that's a generational thing too. My grandparents kind of do that. My grandpa has dementia at this point, and every time I see him, the only question he asks me is, are you working? Are you making money? How
It's like
about, are you happy? Are you
it's just
enjoying your
it's
life?
like a security love language. Like I think
Totally.
so many parents, especially in America, the parents are like, you need to be a lawyer, you need to be a doctor, and the kid does it and they're financially stable, but
They're not
it's
happy.
like, yeah, they're not necessarily happy. And it can afford them the time to maybe do the things that make them happy. But
But I
that
think people forget though. So in my family, I come from a family of lawyers. My dad's a lawyer, my brother's a lawyer. My so like the fact that I'm doing what I'm doing is
you're
like
the
cuckoo crazy
creative.
town. I'm the creative, but I will say I do have other friends that have gone down the traditional route. And that's why I'm very careful with this podcast. It's taking aligned action towards your dream life, whatever that looks like for you, meaning that everybody else's dreams can look different. And the way in
Yeah.
which you pursue your dream can look different. For you, for me, it was quit the 9 to 5. I'm unhappy. I want to go pursue my creative endeavor. For other people, it can very well be you go that traditional route. But what I've found from many people that I've spoken to is sometimes people will go down the traditional route and get so comfortable in that they forget to prioritize the thing that lights them up.
Uh,
And then they do that thing where they look back at their life and they're like, great, I got the house, I got the car, I got the traveling, but I'm not happy. Why?
yeah.
And it's asking yourself those questions. Like, I think the questions that you asked yourself in the pandemic, I feel like so many people kind of either went one way or the other with the
Oh,
pandemic, where
yeah,
they're,
absolutely.
and it feels like you went the way of let me just zoom out for a moment and really look at, like, what do I want my days to look like? What do I want them to feel like? What lights me up? So, what was that process? You quit that 9 to 5, and then did you just start freelancing? Were you just doing tattooing? Were you doing tattooing and multiple things from a logistical perspective? Now you've gotten clarity on the dream, decided to go all in on the dream. What's the next step from that?
I think I was really fortunate because I had met a friend who was a tattooist, and she had her own little studio, and she was my kind of little guardian angel. It's actually funny how I met her because we were mutuals who had met on Instagram, and she did an Insta story basically saying that she had come off some medication, it had messed up her skin, and I spoke with my manager at the surgery and spa, and I was like, "Hey, I have a friend," because I was coming up with content ideas. I was like, "Would we be able to give them some free treatments in exchange for their story or content?" And they said, "Absolutely." And I messaged my friend, and they said that they'd be super down. So the first time I actually met them in person was them coming to get some like free treatments.
Yeah.
And I told them, I was like, because that's when I was thinking of tattooing before I'd quit. And I was like, I have a tattoo machine. I'm starting to practice. And she was like, well, come to my studio. And I went into her studio, and I'm usually a super kind of cautious person. And in her studio, she was like, I love your designs. Here, this design, I want you to tattoo me now. And I had like never tattooed someone like with a machine. And I had this real fight or flight moment when I was like, ooh, like if I handed you a tattoo machine and just went tattoo me, like the thoughts of like what can go wrong or messing up or it looking really bad. And I did it. And it kind of helped lift that weight of you just have to do things.
Yep.
Like you mentioned, some people who do jobs where they're financially safe, but they might not even know what their passion is.
Right.
They might have little faint glimpses a bit of things, but at a certain stage, you just have to take action, and it can be super scary. I don't know what's that much scarier than stabbing someone with a
Tattooing.
needle.
No,
Yeah, giving someone something permanent.
that's one of my biggest philosophies when it comes to taking action towards your dreams. It start messy. Just
Yeah,
start. We can get so caught up in the planning phase or the prep phase, or you could have been like drawing designs and tattooing bananas and doing all this, but it's like eventually you're going to have to just get over it. A lot of the times, it's not going to be great the first time, and that's okay. It might not be great the first 2 times, 10 times, 11 times, whatever it is. I'm curious, what was your process with that of like allowing yourself to be a beginner in something? Was that
it's
hard?
I feel like I've always had like hyper kind of perfectionist for those kind of things. Like
Yeah,
tattooing's fascinating when you're starting because the way larger needles work is that like a single needle that I use now is just one tiny needle, and then it goes up like three, five, seven. But
yeah.
that's three is three of those needles like tightly pushed together. So when
Mhm.
you and five is obviously five. When you pull a line, sometimes you can see that separation of slight like the slight gaps in it. And in my head, I'm like, it has to be perfect. It has to be
Yeah,
like a perfect, like consistent kind of line where that doesn't exist. But I think sometimes what is it, the whole is better than the sum of its parts, whatever.
right.
Like I'd hyper focus and I'd look at it, and I wouldn't want to look at my tattoos I'd done for like a couple of days because I'd be like, that could have been better, blah, blah, blah. And
Yeah.
then you look back at the photo itself and you go, oh, like, that's good. But I was so
Well,
fixated on
on
the
the
small
imperfection?
yeah, on the small
Yeah.
little details that when you look back at it, you're like, oh, that actually is really good.
That's such an interesting analogy on life. If you zoom it out, sometimes in the moment, you're like, what the
Exactly.
fuck am I doing? It
Yeah,
feels messy. It feels like I'm not doing it great. And then you look back at a chapter and you're like, wow, look at all those things I did. That's so cool. Like,
absolutely. No, 100%. And it's fascinating. I feel like I also adopted, I used to have a mindset of comparison where, let's say just for tattoo's sake, I'd see a tattooist. It was more so when I was doing art that it was like, look how talented this person is. Look how incredible this drawing or painting is. I'll never be able to do that. But then I had a mindset shift when I was like, well, how far along is this person on their journey? Are they in year
yeah,
5, 10, 15?
yeah,
And I'm on
yeah,
like month 2. So
yeah,
now I try and, well, I do just see everything as like inspiration
yeah,
and just think that's someone at a certain stage of their journey that, I could be at or I could hopefully eclipse one day. And that I
yeah.
think really helped me too.
I love that. I feel that way. I look at them as expanders. If somebody's doing something at a really high level and it's something that you want to be doing, shifting the mindset, exactly what you're saying, from that of comparison to that of, wow, that's possible. So
Absolutely.
now it's like somebody running, what was it? There was a certain cap to running a mile, like how fast you could run
Yes,
it.
yes,
And
yeah.
then once one person reached it, then like 12 people passed it because they're like, oh, I didn't know a human being could do that. But you just
Exactly.
expanded my capacity of what's possible. And now, like, I could take that and fucking run with it even further, you know?
Yeah.
You talk about I love, like, what you're saying about how it kind of just all flows together, and it's very fun always in retrospect to look back at the little pieces of that story. I always like to think about, like, networking because I feel like networking gets a bad rap, and I think it's because a lot of people do it wrong, where they really think of it like, I'm going to try to get this from you and do this. And it's just feels icky. But I feel like, even based on what you just said, the way in which you got your start and you got your first opportunity to tattoo was because you connected with somebody and you offered them something. And I think that it's not necessarily I give you this, you give me that, but just in general, if you're going about your life and providing value to people in general, that's going to come back around.
Mhm.
Right. And so I think that just hearing the pieces of that story is very cool that you made
Yeah.
this connection, you gave something valuable to your job. It was like a win-win in all these areas, and then you were able to build a real genuine connection and relationship with this person that you already provided value for, and now she's like, "What can I do? How can I be of service to you?"
Yeah.
You know?
I have another one of those, which is, it's funny how it was all working out, but my ex dated a trans guy,
Uh-huh.
and my ex hit me up one time while I worked at the surgery spot and said, "Hey, like this person is looking for top surgery. Is there any way you could speak to the surgeons?" And the work that the surgeons typically did was kind of corrective procedures for things to do with like breast cancer. But one of the surgeons, I spoke with her about it. She's a really lovely lady. And she was like, I would love to do that because obviously, if you're doing work relating to things like cancer, it's as opposed to like a top surgery where it's someone like coming into themselves and being more themselves,
Mhm.
as opposed to something that is a little more traumatic.
Right.
Um, and they said they'd love to do it. So he got his top surgery and did a fundraiser event for it. And I was like, well, if you're down, I can tattoo at that event to like help.
Yeah.
And he was like, absolutely, I'd love for you to do that. And then the poster came out and there was two other tattooists at doing like the fundraiser. And like I mentioned, like being kind of the way my brain works, I was like, oh, three tattooists at like an
Yeah,
event.
yeah,
Like, I don't
yeah.
want to tread on toes. I'm just starting out. Like, I don't want people to think I'm like stealing business for them or whatever. And then I clicked back into my mindset shift where I was like, well, I could either not do it or I could go there. And best case scenario, I meet some people in the tattoo world and maybe even they ask me to tattoo at their studio.
Right.
I was like, that would be like ideal scenario. That would be great for me. So I go and do it. The two tattooists there both co-own a studio, and we were getting on having a chat. And they were like, "Well, where do you tattoo out of?" And I was like, "I'm just like learning at my house." Because I thought about doing an apprenticeship, but in my head, I was like, I can't afford to not really be making money for like 6 months.
Right.
I was just like teaching myself. But they said, come into our studio. And I came to their studio, and that's the studio I've been at for 2 years.
Wow. Saying yes to opportunity leads to
Exactly.
doors
Yeah.
opening.
And
Yeah.
you never really know. And I think if you go in with the best intention and just like meeting people and being open, I feel like, yeah, everything kind of
Yeah.
feels aligned. So that was really nice. I feel very fortunate and appreciative for both of them. And that's where I've been since.
So what was like the timeline from that first person that let you tattoo her that unlocked your limiting beliefs of fear or whatever it is of getting started? You get started, you're home tattooing on your own, and then this was the next thing. What was the time gap in
I
between
feel
that
like it was
first event and
probably between like 4 or 5 months.
okay.
I set myself little goals where I practiced tattooing every night. I met through my tattoo friend a bunch of people. Also, getting into the mindset, some people are so relaxed and like, yeah, you can tattoo me. And I'm like, oh, like you can tattoo my hands. And I'm like, uh, it's
Yeah.
like intimidating, but there's people for everyone, supportive people and people who are very, some people love being tattooists, like early tattoos, like their first tattoo,
Yeah.
because it's kind of like a mark of,
It's special.
yeah,
It's
it's special.
cool.
And I felt
Yeah.
very, because as someone who I said was a perfectionist, sometimes it was like daunting. And then I had to think about the mindset of like, I've turned a lot of things down in the past, like career wise, because I felt like, oh, I'm not capable of doing that, or that it's intimidating, or I don't want to mess up. I don't want to let anyone down. And I started realizing, I think I read something that was like, why are you saying no to things? There's a balance between saying no because I don't feel comfortable, I don't want to do it, and there's saying no because I'm afraid.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think with tattooing, that's like a big one where it's like, am I saying no? You could come and be like, when I'm starting out, I want a whole back piece. And I'd be like, that might be like above my
Right,
grade
right,
right
right,
now.
right, right,
Like I genuinely don't feel I haven't done something bigger than like 2 inches.
right.
But that also, I guess, could be something you just like, why not? So it's just whether
Yeah.
you're willing to accept the challenge and realize why you might be saying no to something.
Well, and also, is it because you don't want to do it, or is it a limiting belief that you don't believe
Yeah.
that you can? Right.
Yeah.
Because I think that there are certain things, and I talk about this often, fear and excitement can feel really similar in the body, right? Like the
Yeah.
reaction that you have. So oftentimes we confuse, like, we're actually excited by the prospect of it, but we're like, oh, I feel scared about that. And then we allow our limiting beliefs of what we think is possible to hold us back. And thinking as well that other people know nobody has any idea what they're fucking doing when they start.
Exactly.
Everybody's just like walking around being like, I don't fucking know. Like,
With tattoos, like you're you have to think about the other person. Like
mhm,
I never want to be the story where someone comes away from an appointment and is like, oh, I didn't really want it there, or I didn't really want to get that. Because you hear a lot of clients be like, oh, I got this tattoo, but I don't really like it. And I'm like, you have to put other people first in these
right,
scenarios. And yeah, so for the reason I say that is because, am I saying no because I I've said no to some people before because I'm like, there'd be someone better for this kind of tattoo. And
right,
I don't want to go in to a tattoo feeling like I'm not super comfortable. Like I'd rather, if you asked me to do like a big portrait piece, I'd be like, there's someone better for that.
right,
And I don't want like my anxious energy or anything to kind of impact
right.
your experience. I got,
And this is also like the signature pieces that I do, right? Like I'm curious, I know certain tattoo artists won't do pieces or like for instance, you specialize in fine line. Like I know there are other tattoo artists that are like, I can do fine line, but I don't do fine line.
yeah,
Or there are certain tattoo artists that hate tattooing words, right?
yeah.
They're like, I don't want to do that. I'm sure as you've progressed, it's like finding your authentic style. I'm really interested in, and then it's interesting to hear that like the gigs that you were doing before were social media. That makes so much fucking sense because I feel like, especially now in this digital era, it's twofold when it comes to business, right? It's like you need to be really fucking good at what you do and have an amazing product.
Yeah.
And then almost just as important, if not maybe more important, is how do you market that product and what does that look like and how many people know about your work? And I feel like with social media now, that is the way in which people are able to grow and expand at such an exponential rate. And I mean, just scrolling through your Instagram, it's like you've got such a distinct style of tattoo, but style of presentation and the way that you create your reels. I'm sure you have people all the time come to you say, I saw your stuff online, like I love your work.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear about your approach with adding in that element, and that's feels like also for you a whole other artistry as well.
It's such an interesting one. Like you said, pretty much every business now, like if you don't have a social media presence, then you're not going to necessarily be at the top of your game or competing.
Totally.
Um, I have friends who are incredible tattoo artists, way, way, way more talented than me. And same premise with like friends who are musicians. It's such a tough time to be in for someone who genuinely just wants to like create because it is a second job.
Yeah.
And I feel like you have to play a certain kind of game with social media sometimes. I don't, me and social media is like a yo-yo where to some degree, like I love certain things of it, but then you're also a slave to an algorithm which varies all the time. And then it's like, oh,
Right.
you've been shadow banned or whatever. But I I guess the easiest thing for me to say, and I realized this a while ago, is trying to betray yourself as best you can through social media alongside whatever your work is. And for me, that involved just silly things like with TikToks and Reels, like the audio, like that's the music that I like to listen to. Like I'm
Right.
not trying to just pick a trending, like you can have, I'm not judging anyone. You can have fun. You can do the ones where, you're miming or whatever, or lip syncing
Yeah.
along and doing like funny things. But for me, it's like I kind of just wanted everything to reflect like my vibe that, although I'm sure some people probably think I like douchey or, but
No,
just
but knowing you and then seeing your social media, I think you do a really good job of that. It's capturing your essence and figuring out an artistic way to express that essence,
it's funny
right?
because one client was like, "Oh, I thought you'd be a bit of a dick," and I was like, "That's just my
Maybe
face."
But maybe it's because I met you first and then, like, versus I
Yeah,
think maybe it's, like, seeing social media and the impression of just that version of you versus, I mean, like,
yeah.
you're one of the sweetest people I've ever met. I'm like, I would just get tattoos just so I can come over and hang out with you. Like
Yeah. But I wasn't like judging them because I think like everyone has different perceptions of how people are. Some people I saw, I watch a lot of YouTube while I draw, and this video was being like, it's cool to try again. We hit like a phase of time where people really didn't like to give the impression they were trying with whatever they're doing, whether it was like
Yeah.
music or like creating anything. And now I feel like we've gotten back into a time where it's cool to show that you're passionate about something. It's cool
Yeah.
to be like, I'm grinding here. I want to make like the best art that I can, and it's ever evolving. And I think it's cool to see that because the people who kind of look like they're not doing the graft, like show that you're like working. Timothy
Totally. Well,
Chalamet said it. He just won like an award and he was like, I want to be one of the greats.
yeah.
Like this is a stepping stone for me, but I want people to know that I tried really hard. Like the Bob Dylan
Yeah.
film he was training for like 5.5 years. It's like the average person wouldn't know that, but it's like, I'm trying out here. I want to be
Yeah.
great. Yeah.
That's the piece that I think is so important. I love that. Trying is cool again. I really
Yeah.
like that phrase. I think that's a big part of what my intention is with this podcast is to show people this side of things, right? I think so many people, to your point earlier, they're comparing their day 0 to your day 100 They are looking at
Exactly.
people that are popping off on social media or are movie stars or famous or whatever. And they're like, whoa, that just happened overnight, like the overnight success mentality where it's like you don't know that what you're seeing is the tip of the iceberg, that there was all of this work, all of this grind, all of these years, all of this thought, all of this planning that
Yeah.
goes into it. And I think it's so, so, so important. I'm just imagining, I'm putting myself in the shoes of our listeners right now, listening to your story. And I can imagine you come across your social media, you're like, wow, like someone who wants to start tattooing, they're like, I'll never be like that guy. He's got a big
That's
following. He does
funny.
great. But there are people that probably feel that way. And you're sitting there being like, me? What? Like,
It's funny, right? Occasionally I get messages where people ask for advice, and I always try and answer them best because I was that person hitting up
right,
like tattooists on Instagram, being like, "Hey, like, if you have any tips or blah blah blah." And it's funny because a couple of weeks ago, one of my bosses was like, "Oh, I saw like the first message you ever sent me," and it was before I met her at that event. And she was like, "Oh, I saw that you were asking her, like, be, like, an apprentice at the time or whatever," and she had, like, never responded, and now I'm, like,
right.
working at a studio.
But also, I think that there's a beautiful lesson in that too. I'm the same exact way. Like, I reach out to everybody. I comment on people's things. I follow, like, as I'm building this right now, I'm on LinkedIn and I'm looking at who are people that are creating things that I'm inspired by. And fuck it, I'll reach out to them. I'll send them a message. And sometimes people don't respond, and that's fine. And it'll be a great story one day when I inevitably do work with them. And I'm
Yeah.
like, hey, look at how long I've been a fan of yours. And then sometimes you'd be surprised when I just started my podcast. Literally, I was like the first like 3 episodes in. There was a guy who I came across on social media. I like loved what he was doing. He had a travel account. It was like amazing. His vibe was super cool. He had over 1 million followers on Instagram and YouTube, like separately each. And I like commented on one of his reels and he replied. And then I was like, fuck it, I'm going to DM him. And I shot him a DM and I told him about the concept of my podcast. And I was like, there's no way this guy's going to want to be on my podcast. I've done 2 episodes. And he was like, sure, I'll do it. And I was like,
Super
holy
cool.
fucking shit. Like 3, 4 episodes in, I had a guy with over 1 million and he shared it on his platforms and I got tons of views and listens. And all of that to say to that point, it's like the answer is always going to be no if you don't ask.
Exactly, 100%.
And I think that's really cool. I think that's super inspiring that this was the person that you reached out to that you were desiring to connect with. And look at
It
all these
it
years later.
happened. How, what was your mindset or your thought process when you wanted to start doing a podcast?
Similar to what you're saying with the tattooing, it was like I didn't feel ready. I was like, I had the concept, I had the passion, I had the idea, and I was like, I don't have the equipment. I was like, I'm traveling full time. So, like, every time I record an episode, I was like, I don't have a studio, I don't have a professional microphone. I don't really, at that time, I hadn't listened to many podcasts. So, I
Mhm.
was like, I don't really know, like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I was talking about it and I had the desire and I knew what I wanted it to be. And I knew that I wanted to bring on people to talk about their dreams because that's my favorite conversation to have with anybody. And I wanted to have something of value to offer to people that I wanted to be in their world, right? So it's like if I meet somebody who's doing something epic, instead of saying, hey, let me pick your brain and like go take you for coffee or whatever, it's like, hey, I actually would love to feature you on my platform. And now I get 1 hour of your undivided attention, ask you anything I want to ask you. Like, that's like fucking amazing, and all the things that I bet, like, when you share this, I bet you there are people that are sitting in your followers list that are like, I want to know more about Sam. I'm curious. How did he start? What did that journey look like? And now it's like giving other people the opportunity to see the behind the scenes, to see under the iceberg of these people that we admire that are doing the thing, that are fucking embodying the party, living their dream. Like, what does that look like for real? And what I found with everybody and what I love to talk about, it's a combination of spirituality and practicality. There's a lot of mindset work that needs to go into getting to that place where you can hold it. But then there's the practical steps like the outreach and like taking all of these little action steps that then lead you to what you're
Absolutely.
stepping into.
I got super into manifesting, and there's a book by a lady called Adil Ahmed, Manifest Now, doing plugs.
Uh-huh.
But like things like that really helped me change my mindset. And just like you said, there's the thought behind it, and then the mindset shift where I had a section of time where I was like, oh, I want to be a tattooist or I'm practicing tattooing. And I was fortunate enough to have friends around me who were like, you are a tattooist.
Yes, that
Like
one.
you are
That's a big
tattooing.
shift. That's a
And
big shift.
that took me months, probably that first, like I said, 4 or 5 months section of time where I was like, I, it was hard for me to say I am a tattooist. It was like,
Nobody's gonna pay you to be a tattoo artist if you're not a tattoo artist.
exactly. But those kind of shifts where you're at a certain point, you do have to say, I believe in what I'm doing and I am this. And
Yes.
that
Owning
that
it.
was like a big one now. And now it's kind of cool and you take it for granted a little, like, oh, like this is my friend Sam, he's a tattooist, or I'm a tattooist. It makes me think of when I went to my friend's New Year's Eve party back in the day, and they're all lawyers in the UK, and they were like, what do you do? And I was like, oh, like I was doing like social media, and I was like, oh, I just do like social media, like, whatever. And I was embarrassed about it. And now when my lawyer friends come here and meet my friends, and my friends here are like, "What do you do?" And they're like, I'm a
Lord.
lawyer." Anyway,
I will say though, I
and I'm
had
not
a
dissing
shift.
lawyers. My sister's a lawyer.
No, no,
Yeah,
I'm totally with you, but I got this shift when I went to Burning Man for the first time because I think that we subconsciously as a society, more particularly in I mean, honestly, in LA, it was the fucking worst because it's all about who are you? What do you do? Like, how can you
yeah,
help me? But the first question typically out of, when you're meeting somebody, just automatically is, what's your name? What do you do? Like, we ask that so often. I used to ask that all the time. That used to be the first thing I asked people. And then I remember I went to Burning Man and I asked that question, and somebody like kind of looked at me sideways and he's like, why are you asking me that? And I was like, what? What do you mean? What? And then I thought about it for the first time ever. And I was like, why am I asking you that? And I was like, well, I just want to know who you are. And he was like, okay, what makes you think that what I do is who I am? And I was like,
he
I don't,
got you.
I don't, and I was like, well, because at that time I was working in entertainment and I very much, my identity was what I was like, I'm Amanda. I work in film. Like I work at one of the top talent agencies in the world. I work for this celebrity. And it was
Yeah,
like, I felt good saying that. And then when I fucking quit my job, packed my apartment and was searching for my purpose, and same thing, somebody asked me, what do I do? And I was like, who are you? The question that like came to me during like that whole like eat, pray, love evolution is like, who are you when you strip all that away? Who are you when you're not Sam the tattooist? Who are you when you're not Sam the lawyer? Who are you when you're just Sam? What does that mean? And
yeah,
I think just it's a big, deep existential question, but I think a question if you're looking to get to know somebody, asking a different question, asking, what are you passionate about? Maybe it is your job. Maybe that is how you make an income, but maybe it's not. Maybe you're a lawyer, but you're passionate about architecture or, and it's
absolutely.
it's reframing. And then I think that question could be triggering for people going all the way back to the beginning of our conversation. So what if you're the lawyer that never got clear on what you're actually passionate about, and someone asks you, what are you passionate about? And that question is triggering
Yeah, that's very
because you don't
true.
know.
But maybe they need that.
Right, right. I think like summing all that up, I think that's like the most beautiful thing. It's just asking yourself that question. What is the thing that lights you up? What is the thing that brings you joy? And if money wasn't a part of it, maybe you can make it a career. Maybe you don't want to make it a career.
Yeah,
But like how do you infuse, like you did during the pandemic? How do you draw every day? Like how do you bring that and typically what we'll find as well, I'm curious like what you were interested in when you were a kid, because I found most people it's like there are hints of that, like you've always been passionate about some element of that, right?
yeah. I yeah, when I grew up, I was super into drawings, huge movie fan, like escapism sort of stuff. And I used to play like a lot of sport. And I guess it reaches a point in time where you're like, I'm not going to be a professional sport player.
Right.
But I had this real big chunk of time after like 18 where I just kind of didn't draw. I didn't draw for like a decade or
Yeah.
whatever. And that's when, you know, I was reconnecting in lockdown and I was like, this really brought me passion. Like I want to reconnect with something that I used to love to do. And I draw loads of random stuff. I draw like Lord of the Rings statues and I like love kind of Greek kind of statues and ancient stuff. Um, so partly reconnecting with that wasn't in lockdown wasn't anything to do with like potentially having a career out of it. I just wanted to do
Right.
something that brought me joy. I think there's a really interesting kind of time now where a passion becomes a side hustle for a lot of
Right.
people, or there's a pressure to it. And like you do and don't have to do that. Like
Yeah.
I feel like pottery is really big at the minute. And it's like, well, are you doing it for you or are you doing it like, you know, are you doing it to kind of make yourself happy or are you doing it to make yourself happy, but also for it to be a potential income,
Right.
maybe become a main job?
Right. I think that's so interesting. Like if you go back in history, people used to dance, sing, play music, draw, create just for the
Yeah,
sake of creating. Like that's in our human DNA, in our human nature. And I think that's an important thing to remember. It's that the finding of your passion, the answer to that question does not necessarily need to be the way in which you make an income. Like for
absolutely.
certain people, yes, for certain people, no, but tapping into those things and yeah, that inner child work, it's really interesting. I had the exact same thing where I grew up doing musical theater. I sang, I danced, I was on stage. And then after college, I only did it like, for a few years, I stopped and I realized this is like where I had my kind of come to Jesus, where I was like, I go to work, I go to networking drinks, and that's all I fucking do. That's all
Yeah.
I do is I drink and I work. And I was like, if I met me, but for real, I was like, if I met me right now, like if I was at a networking event, you're like, hi, like I would be so disinterested in getting to know me because there's nothing interesting. Versus
Yeah,
like years ago, I would be like, well, I love to do shows and I love theater and I do this and I do that. And it's like, it's bringing back fucking hobbies, doing things just for fun, just for the sake of doing them because they light you up. Just because you're not going to be a professional sports player doesn't mean that you can't be on a league. And that's what kids do, right? And that's why I think going back to like the inner child, it's like when you were a kid, you did things not for the thought of what is this going to get me, but you're like, I'm doing this because it brings me joy, makes me
absolutely.
happy, feels good.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's really fascinating. All very good points.
Well, I want to give you an opportunity to plug. I don't know if you want to talk about your studio or if anybody would like to follow you, work with you. We're going to put your socials down in the
Yeah.
below. But if there's anything you'd like to share or plug, I want to give you the space to do that.
Oh, get more tattoos. No, I'm not really here to plug. It's just a pleasure to be able to come on and yeah, and chat about these things. It's nice. It's just to kind of reflect on journeys, and sometimes they take a long time. For me, it took over a decade to kind of start being like, oh, I can do something I'm passionate about.
Yeah,
And I guess my mindset is when you're doing something with pure intentions and because it brings you joy, I feel like things do tend to align. And it might not always be a super smooth road to it, but yeah, it's part of the journey and it makes you like grow from it. So yeah, I feel very fortunate that I've been doing pretty well. And it's just a pleasure to be able to do jobs where you can kind of like it makes people happy. Yeah.
totally. Totally. Well, this was such a fun conversation. I loved hearing more of
Pleasure.
your
Thank you,
story. I'm so
Amanda.
grateful to have had you. And if you guys haven't already done so, please like, subscribe, follow Sam, reach out to us if you have any questions or you want to dive deeper into any of these topics. Always love to keep an open line of communication, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye.